a very interesting fireside chat titled Future of Work After Post-COVID-19 World Business Continuity Roadmap. I'd first like to welcome and introduce the members of the fireside chat. Sanjeev Sharma, Country Managing Director, ABB India Limited. CP Gurnani, CEO and Managing Director, Tech Mahindra, could not make it because of a personal emergency. But in his place, we have Harshvendra Soin, Chief People Officer, Tech Mahindra. Manoj Adlakha, Chief Executive Officer, American Express. And this session will be moderated by Keshav R. Murugesh, Group CEO of WNS Global Services. Keshav, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, hello everyone. And maybe I should just start this session with a question. What is the last global and business crisis that all of you can recall vividly? I would assume it's the 2007 and 2008 recession, right? Well, an interesting study done by MIT Sloan around that time, based on this 2008 recession, was that companies that actually bounced back had actually rethought and reinvented themselves even before the recession had started and before the crisis had actually hit hard. Let's therefore briefly step into what was the position with industry pre-COVID-19 and how the new post-COVID momentum will now be seen. We had originally said pre-COVID business, pre-COVID, that every business was really a digital business. We also said that innovation and new technologies driven by things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, cognitive thinking, analytics, all of that, and hyper-personalization would create a completely new engine and create new change in business. However, in the blink of an eye, COVID-19 has transformed all that we have, all that we are seeing. And today, technology has become a very key imperative. The speed of transformation, you will agree, has changed dramatically, and what we thought could be achieved over a few months or years now has been achieved and will be achieved in a matter of a few weeks, at the most a few months. So how are we handling this crisis? How are countries grappling with all of this? What will be the future of work as a result of the outcomes of this pandemic? And how will we orchestrate winning themes across India and the rest of the globe in order to stay relevant? To discuss this program, we have a high-powered group. I'm really delighted to have with us Sanjeev Sharma, the Managing Director of ABB India, Manoj Adlakha, the CEO of American Express, and Harsh Soin, the CPO of Tech Mahindra. So let me start with you, Harsh. What is your recommendation in making big, bold, and strategic bets in steering organizations to the digital future of work instead of band-aids and interim kind of iterations?
Very good question, and here's my take. With COVID happening, clearly you saw dispersed workforces, right? Couple of benefits of COVID which were unintended were things like gig working becoming really key. And today, along with TechM, I'm sure a lot of other organizations are going very heavy on gig working. And interestingly, diversity and inclusion also is an unintended beneficiary. Where command and control was the leadership style, I think today, if you have to really look at, motivate, inspire our troops, then technology is needed. The reason why technology is needed is because of course, we will see a mix of what I say, work at office and work at home. Employee engagement per se will be converted into what I call human experiences, which will go beyond the workplace into people's houses. and beyond the employee into their families. And to sustain personalized experiences, the use of technology will be important. But I must make a point right here that while technology will be an enabler, the moments of truth will always be human. And therefore, the mix is very important. We should not say that a high-tech environment will replace a high-touch environment. What we want to say, and what we say in TechM, is that we will enable a high-touch environment through a high-tech environment, which basically means technology becomes an enabler. Just to give you a few examples, virtual onboarding is here to stay, even in the COVID scenario. Even your engagement scenarios, like, for example, we use our chatbots for keeping in touch. We have a humanoid, which is still answering all queries of our employees, because a humanoid is not COVID sensitive. So, the humanoid is running around answering queries of people even in this age. We will need to have touchless experiences. In our offices, we have facial recognition instead of the normal attendance where you'll have to sort of swipe in cards. So I think there are many examples in the future that will ensure that technology becomes a key enabler. But I repeat, moments of truth will still be very human.
Excellent. Any comments from the others? Okay, Manoj, I'll move on to you.
Yeah.
So, Manoj, COVID-19 has ensured to a very great extent that work from home has actually become the new norm. Do you actually see this, the merit in this model sustaining for certain roles? And how do you think businesses and professionals will benefit as a result?
So firstly, Keshav, thank you very much for having me on this panel, amongst other esteemed panelists. And before I get into your question, I do want to make one statement, which is we are all in this together. We are all probably weathering the same storm, but sailing different ships. So we're doing it differently. We're approaching the whole problems differently, depending on the industry we are in, depending on the organization or institution we are in. So it's absolutely, unimaginable times. And, when I look at American Express alone, for a company that's been around 170 years, we have weathered many storms. We've looked at lots of things have happened, but something of this magnitude is probably unheard of. Specifically getting into, you spoke about working from home. When I look at working from home, this is not a new phenomenon, right? It started in the 80s, probably, maybe in the 90s, it became more pronounced, and thereon, as PCs, starting with personal computers, which were working at a very slow speed. And then as broadband started to, increase, a lot of people started to work from home. And there was a study done actually before COVID, and that's important. It was done before COVID, which said that at a global level, when you look at the global workforce, at least 70%, and that's quite a meaningful number, 70% of the global workforce works at least once a day from home. So that's not a small number. And then we'll come to COVID, because COVID has been really, to my mind, a tipping point. So there was another study, and just trying to get myself familiar with and grounding myself in some of these studies. So it was already 70%, may not have been at that level in India, but I'm talking about a global workforce. When you look at, there was another study which said that, by 2025, when you look at the traditional workforce and the virtual workforce, it'll be half and half. So within the next 5 years, we were looking at heading that way. So what I feel COVID has done, it has accelerated that movement. It's really been a tipping point. And if anything, we will get there probably much faster. So let's, for me, I've been working 30 years, and this is the first time I worked from home. And I won't say I used to always wonder how people work from home. But when I look at myself, I look at my teams, I think, if anything, productivity has only increased. It has only increased. And I'm not even getting into, what eventually probably some of the companies are going to benefit regarding, savings when it comes to rentals, commute time. We all know carbon emissions, all of those are totally givens. the future, Keshav, to your point, to my mind, is not going to be only working from home, right? It has to be a combination of working physically and working remotely. So, let's call it physical, just the way we call something global or local, right? So this is a word I'm just kind of getting it out there. And having, even as this happens and we get into, I don't like to use the word new normal, but let's say as we, get out of COVID, I feel two things are going to be absolutely, those are the imperatives and essentials. One, we need to communicate at an institution level far more than what we've done in the past across all organizations. And leadership will have a very, very strong role to play. And, the esteemed panelist before me said that very well. He put it out that, empathy has to be shown, understanding has to be shown. We have to be out there for our, teams. Within American Express, and I'm sorry, I'm bringing it back to American Express for a moment, the way we went, the day lockdown happened, we suddenly had all our colleagues working from home and, providing the service the way they did. And they have always done in the past, to all our customers. And we don't only provide customers to Indian service to Indian customers, but globally. The last 2 points I would like to make over here is that we really feel, in my view, that the colleagues and we call employees colleagues, they're going to be far more productive when they can control the environment. So if you're having the ability to control the environment in which you operate, you're going to be far more productive. And the second piece is that at the heart of the virtual working lies trust and accountability. Trust at the end of the employer, and because that productivity and efficiency will go up, and accountability at the end of the employee, who will make sure that whatever task is assigned to him or her gets done. So the focus going forward is going to move more from input to outcomes. That is the way I see what is going to happen in times to come.
Well, excellent points. And clearly you're saying that work from home will be blended into the regular model. Just on a lighter vein, I just want to mention that imagine just 3 or 4 months ago, parents were telling children that we're going to monitor your screen time, I'm going to monitor how much TV you watch. Today, they're monitoring it to make sure it's actually on the excess side. So, it's so different for us who work, and now it's become so different for students. Let's move on to Sanjeev. Clearly building strong digital capabilities is a very important, imperative for business. Why don't you share your thoughts around the type and the extent of investments needed to accelerate the digital march by businesses?
Thanks, Keshav. I think good comments made by Manoj and Harsh. So as far as the digital march is concerned, and as a comment on COVID-19, I believe COVID-19 is really able to create a paradigm shift much faster than many people thought. Because as we know that around us for many years, now the user interfaces are replacing the physical interfaces, be it Ubers of the world or any other models which are working. So I think that is something which, as a technology enabler, has been happening around us anyway. And we are getting used to it, and we are adopting it at a faster pace. So just to give you an example from the world I come from, which is the industries. Now, what we have is we have customers who are across the world. We serve them from Bangalore as well as from different locations in India and also within the country. Now, earlier, there was a requirement for us to physically connect with the customer and physically go to the customer to be able to ensure the uptime of the industrial equipment that they operate, which we have installed and supplied to them. But now, lately, all the connections are remote, and customers are increasingly accepting that as a behavior that they can be serviced remotely. Just to give you an example, we manage about 7,000 robots all over the globe remotely from India. So we connect with them, we get the diagnostics, we can see them online, and before even the customer notices it, We are able to create a intervention to them to tell them, listen, hey, you should do certain things so that the production line doesn't stop. Same thing in India. If you have northeast, some steel plant in a difficult terrain, which takes a couple of days to travel from Bangalore, what we are able to do is we are able to remotely connect to those equipment. And if there's a shutdown or trip, we are able to do the diagnostics, and within 1 hour, we are able to bring the equipment back online, and there's no production loss. Otherwise, it used to take 2 days of production loss for somebody to physically go and fix it. So what happens is that these baseline connections are already there. And now, as I see from the technology investments, there'll be more user interfaces that will be built on top of it so that customer has more confidence on it. We have better delivery mechanism. And also we will develop a lot of analytics on top of it so that we learn how we can serve the customers effectively globally. Because at the end of the day, as an enterprise, the only reason of our existence is customers. And if we are able to serve our customers well, I think that's exactly what matters. And that's how we start our thinking, and that's how we start building our future business models. So I do believe that going forward, whether it is the working from the offices or our factories, more and more user interfaces are going to diminish the physical world and the digital world. I think that's where the technology will be built. And every instrument which used to be or equipment which used to be considered as a dumb, it will be IoTized. It can spew the data. It doesn't matter which part of the world or which part of the country it is operating. It continues to inform us in our remote service centers, and we are able to serve the customers. And the requirement to travel physically, I think it will continuously to go down, and the availability and the reliability of the client's processes from our point of view will continue to grow. So this is where I think more and more investments will go. And based on the analytics, since you do everything digitally, there's the data stored, and you analyze the data, and you are able to continue to improve your equipment, as well as the possibility of avoiding the failure rates that you understand better, because so much of data collection is done from so many assets. So that's one area. And the second thing, which I'm very glad to join this session, Keshav, is earlier times, about 1 year back or 6 months back, I get a lot of invitations to be part of panels, to go to New Delhi, go to Mumbai, just to physically show up on a dais and a stage. But now that user interface, using this user interface on Zoom, has converted that physical presence into a digital presence. So I believe this is going to be the kind of the future for us to interact, whether we are talking about work from home, whether we are talking about joining and sharing our ideas across the industries, across the expert base that we have within the country and across the world. And it will become easier for all of us to participate and be more effective for our customers. So that's the direction I think it will go.
Excellent points, Sanjeev. And I also take that as permission from you to keep inviting you, and frankly, all the other panelists also, to many more sessions, because there are lots of really smart people listening to all of this, and they need to listen to all of you and keep shaping their thoughts, because nobody ever planned a BCP plan for COVID-19. So I think there's new thinking that needs to emerge. Manoj, you spoke about productivity and work from home, but can you talk about how we can catalyze innovation, and also of people as well as regulatory policy tweaks you would like to see in order to convert all of this into an advantage?
So, I think innovation is, it's a journey we are all going to be on, and we have been on for many, many years. So I don't think it has anything per se to do with COVID. The way I look at innovation is it's giving a lot of us who are at home a lot more time to do a reflection on our products, on our propositions, on the service delivery that we are providing, and how can we better that? So, we are as a team now spending 10, 12 hours ideating. And a lot of that ideation, which earlier, I'm not saying the ideation was never happening earlier, it's happening in a more pronounced and in a more structured manner now, given, we are getting into the right meetings with the right stakeholders. I think the piece where I feel a lot of changes happened over the last 3 months, pre-COVID and post-COVID, is when we look at fintechs, and that's a little more pertinent to the industry I belong, where we are in constant dialogue with the startups, with the fintechs. We look at because they are very agile. They're very, very agile, and sometimes bigger organizations, for all the right reasons, can take a little more time to react to circumstances. So what we are doing as a team is, throwing out problem statements to these fintechs. A lot of startups are out there, and Sanjeev is based in Bangalore, which is the heart of fintechs, and we are through that constant dialogue, constant interactions. They're coming around and turning around solutions to us in 48 to 72 hours. Again, I'm not saying this wasn't happening earlier, but now we are, in a situation where we realize that, we don't need to travel. We are, through these kind of, mediums, we are, engaging with each other. We are coming out with solutions, and we are saying, let's take a little bit of a, if I may use the word punt, let's take a bit of a punt. Let's learn. Let's, something will probably work. Something will not work. And to me, innovation is a lot about risk taking. So I think when we look at, as leaders, have we become more resilient? Yes. Are we ready to fail? I think so. I think that's one thing that has taught us, this whole thing about decisions have to be taken in a far quicker manner. We need to be far more agile. We cannot continue to wait for all the analysis paralysis, because that can take forever. And through this process, we will benefit all the important stakeholders, which are, whether it is our customers or our shareholders, and who are the people who are going to do it, that is the third most constituency, which is our own employees. They are the ones. So I think there is a great learning as we're going through this.
Excellent points. Sanjeev, I'm just going to switch gears, go a little more into the people side of things. But the reality is, with all that's happening around us, and with a shift in the models of how we engage with our people now, and Harsh spoke about bots and things like that before, in terms of just managing the expectations as well as complaints and things like that from employees. Will promotions and recognition in companies now become too data-oriented, considering is never going back to the old normal? Sanjeev, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, here we go. Well, I think we had great learning in last 3.5 months of working remotely, and there are different aspects of the business which are more, which can be done work from home and remotely, and there are many which are physical, and you need to come to factory and you need to come to the operations to do that. So I think there will be a kind of a mix of change as we go forward. It will not be uniform in all types of activities. Now, and especially our global business services center, where the crowd is quite young, there are a lot of millennials there. So their requirement to connect and feel part of the company has a different requirement relative to our very heavy engineering oriented businesses, wherein the average age is much bigger, because people have different requirements there. Now, with respect to the promotions as recognition is concerned, I think the recognition and rewards will become more and more prominent. I think because earlier it was used to be subjective. I believe if we have more analytics-based, digital-oriented work output, it is much easier to create system by which you can measure which employee is creating output and who's more productive. So there will be less subjectivity in judging in terms of who really performed well, because it is now output-based performance, and that's, I think, much easier to judge. And otherwise, earlier in the recognition systems, you always have this bleeding of opinions of on the people, and sometimes people didn't feel that it was done in a 100% fair manner. But I think this analytics will support, and probably that will remain part of the fabric, the rewards and recognition part. The promotion part, I think if you mean by the promotion by the levels, I think it again will be dependent on the skill levels a person has acquired and ability to lead the teams and how to work in the teams remotely or physically. I think those parameters will matter. And I think there could be a different hierarchical structures in future, if that's what you meant. And the promotions will be according to the skills. So I think it will not change fundamentally, but it will have more aids and analytics available to make those decisions.
Well, excellent points. And Harsh, I've got a special question for you, which I think and your answer is going to benefit all of us. What kind of talent or skill sets do you think will be so unique that they cannot be robotized or distilled by any cognitive technology?
So great question. But just before that, I was listening to Manoj and Sanjeev and just a perspective which is slightly different. I think today we're not talking about work from home or work from office. I think we're talking about work from anywhere. Because remember, while we are all very euphoric and, including ourselves at 94, 95% up on the work from home scenario, but the reality is there is lack of infrastructure, electricity failures, 6 people to a room is still a reality. And therefore, we'll have to taper it over a long period of time. And I do agree with Manoj that it's going to be a mix of both. And the emphasis will now be work from anywhere. On the talent piece, I think it's a very important question you ask. Actually, a lot of talent that we are looking for will not be robotized. What is robotized is only the tactical, monotonous, repeatable jobs. If you look at an RPA, which is our robotic process automation, the jobs which are at the lower end and repeated are what is normally automated or robotized. But clearly, companies which have a purposefulness, and more we see that people are not joining brands, they're joining companies with a purpose. And that cannot ever be robotized. The vision can never be robotized. And of course, the whole creative thinking, that is the power of a human being, will always remain. So I would say that a lot of people have also asked me in the past whether this means taking away of jobs. I think the number of jobs that have been created in the last 2 years in new areas and new fields is so humongous that the job market has only expanded. So I think we will see some jobs being robotized. We clearly see new skills coming in, but a lot still remain where human intellect, creativity, collaboration, and empathy will be needed. And those jobs can never be robotized.
Excellent answer again. And I must say that this panel, the perspectives coming from all of you is so interesting, for me, and I'm pretty certain for the audience as well. I have a few more questions, but in the interest of time, I'm going to do something interesting now. I'm actually going to go into a rapid fire session where I'm going to ask each of you 4 questions, and each of you will answer with only one word, please, right? Because whatever comes first to your mind. So we'll start with you, Manoj. One trait that you found redundant during remote leadership over the past few months?
Authority.
How would you substitute a handshake in a virtual meeting? Show me a gesture. Remote work negatively impacts culture and correctedness. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
A one-word adjective for leading during COVID-19 times.
Empathy.
Outstanding. Sanjeev, let's go to you. One trait that you found redundant?
Need for people to report every day. So it's a daily reporting. Let me.
Okay. How would you substitute the handshake in a virtual meeting?
Namaste.
Excellent. Again, remote work negatively impacts culture and correctedness. Do you agree or disagree?
Disagree.
And a one-word adjective for COVID-19.
A paradigm shift.
Excellent. Harsh, now over to you. What trait did you find redundant?
I think the whole control.
Okay. And how would you substitute that handshake in a meeting?
A hello on a virtual tool is enough.
Excellent. And again, in terms of culture and connectedness, do you agree or disagree that remote work negatively impacts?
I disagree. I think it will work. It will work. Culture is important.
And one word adjective for leading during the COVID-19 times?
Resilience.
Resilience. Amazing. Excellent. I have a few, audience questions. So I'm just going to look at what they are and come to you. One question is that, all of us spoke about how we came back strongly in spite of the fact that probably there was no BCP planning for a pandemic of this nature, where we had just about 3.5 hours to prepare. The question is, why did most organizations fail to meet the requirements to deal with the BCP plan for COVID-19? And how should we bake in the learning from this for the next pandemic? Anyone?
Well, I think BCP planning is you look into two aspects. One is your ability not to be able to travel to office, or the internet connection is disconnected to the building you operate from, or there is no power supply because the transformer burnt out, or something which disables you to operate from the office, right? And we always had that part of the BCP that people are able to operate either from alternate offices or from home. So quite frankly, it was not such a dramatic part, but only thing we never thought that it will come that quickly. And given the technology and the bandwidth is deployed, and most of the people live in a reasonably comfortable dwellings, I think they could switch back into that possibility. So for us, I think it was not such a big bump as I would imagine. Yeah.
The only thing I may add over there is, given the gravity of the event, the magnanimity of the event that took place, I really believe across all institutions, the BCPs have worked very well. Is there an opportunity area? Could there be certain tweaking? Could there be, but just all of us getting back, and we spoke about this earlier in the panel, that we all feel we've become more productive, more efficient. The work is going on. So I think that speaks volumes for an event of this magnitude, that nothing has really come to a standstill.
Well, thank you very much for that clarification, gentlemen, because the reality is, while nobody would have across the world put in, COVID-19 into a BCP plan, but the reality is most companies were actually well prepared, and across industries, in a matter of a few hours, days, weeks, we were all up and running extremely well, and that gives a lot of...
The only change, Keshav, I like to add, the only change that we'll probably have is that companies today, when they make BCP plans, including ours, will plan for a black swan event.
Yep.
Because we never planned in our BCP for a black swan event. And I think, from whatever it's predicted, I think companies will now have a robust black swan BCP plan in place too.
So Harsh, there's another question that's come in, which, maybe you should start the answer, but, we could again go back to Manoj after that. But the question says that, some of the panelists felt that productivity has actually increased, and even in the media, there is, quite a bit of news about the fact that in a work from home environment, productivity has increased and lots more technology is being enabled, more bots are being used, and employees are being managed to the absolute hilt minute by minute. So if productivity has increased and everything looks so good, why are employees also complaining about the fact that work-life balance has been lost and they're working too much? And what are the steps you guys are taking to just manage that better?
Very good question, whoever has asked. So here is, and I always said, while there is euphoric about productivity increasing and, we're having meetings where meetings start on time, end on time, you take decisions. However, remember, the scenario today, Keshav, is that we are working at home and working from home. So people are doing home chores as well as doing office work. People are getting screen fatigue. People are doing double shifts. So therefore, the stress and the psychological impact over a period of time is happening. And I think the reason people are complaining is because the discipline of an office life seems to have been broken. And if we need to sustain this for a long period of time, I think we'll have to distinguish and be more disciplined. We will have to time our breaks. We'll have to time when we work at home and when we work from home, because the two cannot be combined. And therefore, I think that's going to be a big shift in our managing our day and managing our weeks efficiently.
So, gentlemen, this has been a really good interaction. Thank you all very much for your time. I just want to end by giving the audience the flavor that there's a lot of confidence with the panelists in terms of how we manage the COVID situation, how we are investing in terms of the future as well, and more importantly, how we continue to see all of this as business as usual, for the long term. In fact, Manoj spoke about a new term. He said risical, and the need to plan to be risical, which means residents and physical in the office, as well as over communicate with clients and your internal stakeholders. Technology and minds are key, is what Sanjeev, Harsh spoke about, and he spoke a lot about how important it was to manage the hopes and aspirations of the talent. And Sanjeev spoke a lot about different things, but he finally said that customer always comes first, and we should never lose sight of that. And technology will ultimately reduce the physical handoffs in order to make sure that the end experience for a customer will only get better as a result of this experience. I once again thank every one of our panelists, and I hand this session back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.